There was a man I knew once, a quiet soul who had worked with his hands his whole life plumbing, mostly until arthritis and age caught up to him. He told me once, sitting across from me in the low light of my office, "I still want to feel like a man, but my body, it just doesn't show up anymore." His voice was steady, but his eyes were tired. And I've heard that same quiet grief from far too many men over the years. Not grief about death, not about failure, but about something softer, more personal, the slow fading of that inner fire, that sense of aliveness, of being wanted, of having your body echo back what your mind still feels. And for most of these men, they never saw it coming. They still had desire. They still had a heart full of memory and longing. But when it came time to act, to connect, their body simply didn't rise to meet them. And the worst part is, most of them blamed themselves or chalked it up to age. But I'll tell you something I've learned. From decades sitting with soldiers, steelworkers, widowers, and men who've quietly outlived their own expectations. It's not always age. Sometimes it's a quiet mistake, something that seemed harmless, even helpful at the time. I'm Dr. Thomas Leighton. I've spent more than 40 years listening to the struggles most men are too proud or too ashamed to talk about. And one of the most overlooked causes of sexual decline I've seen happens when a man starts touching himself in a way that slowly separates him from his own body. If this message speaks to you, type 1. If you're unsure, type 0. Either way, thank you for listening. Because what I'm about to share isn't a lecture. It's a gentle reminder of what your body still knows and wants to remember. Let me walk with you a moment. You see, one of the most damaging habits I've seen over the years, and I say this gently, is when a man relies on constant, overstimulating pornography, not because it's dirty, not because it's shameful, but because it trains the brain to respond only to something that isn't real. Over time, a man's arousal stops being about connection and starts being about control. It becomes visual, not visceral, and what used to feel natural starts to feel distant. I've had good men sit across from me, truck drivers, pastors, retirees, who say, "Doc, I still feel desire, but my body, it doesn't come with me anymore." And I've seen the pattern. Porn floods the brain with dopamine, again and again, until the receptors go numb, until the real thing, the warmth of skin, the intimacy of breath feels dull. The brain starts to expect intensity, not intimacy, and the body follows that lead. Blood flow starts to drop, the nerves grow quiet, and a man finds himself more alone than ever, even in his own hands. Now here's the deeper piece, the part no one really talks about. That constant flood of artificial arousal doesn't just numb your mind, it puts your whole body under quiet stress. Your nervous system tenses, your pelvic muscles tighten, your blood vessels constrict. All the things your body needs to get and stay hard start shutting down. And most men, they never even realize it's happening. They just think it's age. But it's not age, it's conditioning. And the good news is, it can be undone. You don't have to give up pleasure. You just have to let your body remember what real, grounded desire feels like again. That might mean stepping away from the screen, sitting in the discomfort of those first few quiet moments. But in that stillness, something starts to come back. Your breath softens. Your nerves reawaken. Your body begins to feel again. And that's when things begin to change. If you're finding this helpful, or if something deep inside is starting to stir a little, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. That way, you won't miss future insights made just for men like you. Men who still care. Men who still feel. Now, I want to talk to you about something else. A pattern I've seen again and again, especially in men who've lived most of their lives taking care of everyone but themselves. It's what happens when masturbation becomes just another task, another box to check. I've had older men tell me flat out, "Doc, I don't have time. I just want to get it over with." And I understand that. Sometimes you're just looking for release, a way to fall asleep, a moment of control in a world that feels scattered. But here's the thing. When you rush, when you race to finish, your body doesn't feel safe. It shifts into what we call sympathetic mode, the fight or flight state. Your blood pulls away from the pelvis. Your muscles clench. Your nerves stop sending signals to the parts of you that need to be alive. And that beautiful, subtle, full-body response you once knew, it disappears. You're left with a mechanical motion, no breath, no depth, no real pleasure. And over time, the body stops showing up because you stopped showing up for yourself. Masturbation, when done with presence, can be like stretching. It keeps blood moving. It keeps tissues oxygenated. It reminds your nerves that they still have a job to do. But when you rush, it's like sprinting without warming up. Everything tightens. Everything hurts. So I gently invite you to try something different. Slow down. Let breath be your rhythm. Touch, not just to finish, but to feel. Because that's when healing begins. That's when arousal returns. And that's where we'll pick up next. And when it comes back, when your body begins to feel again, it often happens in the smallest, most surprising ways. One man, a retired Navy officer, told me this after a few weeks of slowing down. I didn't even get all the way there, but I felt something again, like my body was trying to talk back to me. That's what we're really doing here. We're letting the body remember that it's safe to speak again, to feel, to respond. Now, let me take you deeper. There's another habit that too many men fall into, one that sounds harmless, but causes more harm than most realize. It's the tight grip, the one that creeps in over years, decades even. Harder, faster, more pressure just to feel something. I've heard it countless times. Nothing else feels as good anymore, Doc. And when I gently ask about the way they've been pleasuring themselves, a pattern comes to light. A strong grip, a fast rhythm, a hardened routine. It's not something to feel guilty about. It's what we do, often unconsciously, when we're chasing sensation that started to fade. But here's the issue. The penis isn't made for pressure alone. It's a highly sensitive organ, delicate nerve endings, intricate blood vessels, smooth muscles. And when you overstimulate it with years of tight, aggressive touch, those nerves begin to shut down. What once felt good starts to feel muted. Pleasure becomes harder to reach. Erections become weaker or vanish entirely. Your body learns to expect force instead of connection. And in doing so, it forgets how to respond to anything else. I once treated a man in his early 70s who told me he hadn't truly enjoyed sex in over a decade. His partner's touch gentle, loving, barely registered. It wasn't because he didn't care. It was because his nervous system had been trained to ignore anything that wasn't rough and fast. And that's where it gets heartbreaking. Because the tighter the grip becomes, the more numbness it creates. And the more numbness you feel, the tighter you grip next time, chasing a sensation that your own hand slowly stole away. But the body, thankfully, is forgiving. It wants to recover. It wants to feel again. And that starts by loosening your grip, by treating pleasure not like a task, but like a conversation. Gentle touch, slower breath, curiosity, not conquest. It may feel awkward at first, even dull, but within weeks, the sensitivity can return. And with it, a kind of aliveness you thought was gone. Now, I want to touch on something most men have never been told, because we were never taught this. And yet, it plays a central role in your ability to get and stay hard. Your pelvic floor. Most men think of erections as a blood flow issue or a hormone issue. And yes, those things matter. But the truth is, the muscles underneath your abdomen, deep inside your hips, the ones that support your bladder, bowels, and yes, your penis, they matter more than most realize. If they're too tight, blood can't flow properly. If they're too weak, you lose the ability to hold and sustain arousal. And here's the kicker. Most men after 60 have both issues. Weakness from years of disuse, tension from years of stress. It's a 1-2 punch that robs you of your strength. Now, I know this might sound like just another thing to worry about, But what I'm about to tell you could make all the difference. You can begin reclaiming control today. Not with pills, not with surgeries, but with something as simple as breathing, squeezing gently, and paying attention. Kegel exercises, yes, but done with awareness. Mindful breathing that draws your attention down into the body. Posture adjustments that let your hips stay open. It's not flashy, but it's real. I once had a patient, 68, long retired, stiff from years of back pain, who looked at me like I was joking when I asked him to practice pelvic exercises. 6 weeks later, he came back with tears in his eyes. He said, "My wife held me again, and I actually felt strong." That's not a miracle. That's what happens when the foundation is rebuilt. Because these muscles are the unsung heroes. They don't just help you get hard. They help you feel like a man again. And that brings me to something even deeper. Something most doctors never talk about, but I've seen it in the eyes of too many men to ignore. The emotional weight. The silent, heavy reasons why some men can't get hard, even after fixing everything else. It's not just the tight grip. It's not just the porn. It's not just the rushing. It's the loneliness. The quiet ache of being disconnected from others, from yourself. You see, a lot of men don't touch themselves because of pleasure. They do it to escape, to numb, to forget. And I say this with all the compassion in my heart. That kind of habit slowly breaks you from the inside. It wires your body to associate arousal with stress, not joy, to connect release with sadness, not satisfaction. And the body, wise as it is, starts to protect itself. It pulls back. It shuts down because it no longer trusts those moments of intimacy. I had one man mid-60s, divorced, living alone, tell me he'd gone years without really feeling anything. Masturbation had become his only touch, but instead of making him feel alive, it left him hollow. What helped him wasn't technique. It wasn't supplements or devices. It was learning to pause, to breathe, to stop running from his emotions, and start listening to them. That's when things began to shift. Not just his erections, but his sense of self, his dignity, his energy. Because this isn't just about function, it's about connection. To your body, to your feelings, to the truth that you are still worthy of pleasure, of intimacy, of care. And that, my friend, is something no pill will ever teach you. We still have one final piece to explore. One truth that brings all of this together, not as information, but as transformation. Because all of this means nothing if you still believe deep down that you no longer deserve to feel alive. That's where we'll go next. And here we are, standing at the quiet center of it all. Over the years, I've sat with countless men who quietly stopped believing they still deserve to feel, not because of something dramatic, but because of a slow, invisible drift. They stopped looking at their own bodies. They stopped touching themselves with care. And over time, they began to treat pleasure like something they had outgrown, like hair they no longer had, or strength that had slipped away without saying goodbye. One man, nearly 80, once said to me, "I feel like I'm just going through the motions now. I don't hate my body. I just don't really see the point anymore." And that, my friend, is the belief I want to gently unravel with you. Because here's what I know from years of practice and decades of listening to men who thought they were too far gone. You're not. Your body still remembers. It remembers what it was like to feel warmth, connection, breath. It remembers desire that came not from a screen or a habit, but from something real. But like any relationship, your body needs to know you're still willing to show up, not with judgment, but with presence. So how do you do that? How do you reconnect with a body that you may have tuned out for years? Start small. Start quiet. Begin by carving out a little time, not for performance, not for a goal, but just to be with yourself. Let the room be still. Take a few deep, slow breaths, in through your nose, out through your mouth. Let your shoulders drop. Let your belly soften. Touch your body gently, not to race to climax, but to awaken what's still there. Focus on sensation, not speed. If you've spent years gripping too tightly or rushing the moment, This may feel strange at first. That's okay. You're retraining your nervous system to recognize safety again, to recognize care. And when the body feels safe, blood begins to flow, nerves begin to fire, and something deeper begins to return. Now let's talk about the pelvic floor. Not the most glamorous part of the body, I know, but one of the most important. It's a web of muscles that supports everything below your waist, including the blood vessels that make erections possible. When these muscles are tense, or weak, as they often are in men past 60, they can restrict blood flow and block sensation. So here's something simple you can do. Starting tonight, take a breath and gently contract the muscles you'd use to stop urination. Hold for a count of 3, then relax. Do that 10 times. This isn't about brute strength. It's about awareness. Each time you practice, you're sending a quiet message to your body. I haven't forgotten you. Posture matters too. When you slouch, the pelvis collapses. Blood flow suffers. Your breath shortens. But when you stand tall or sit upright, chest open, shoulders soft, you create space for circulation, and your body responds. Now, if you've been using masturbation to escape loneliness or boredom, know that you're not alone. I've spoken with men who turned to it not out of desire, but because silence felt too loud, or because the night was long and empty. And while there's no shame in seeking comfort, there's a risk when your body starts to associate arousal with stress instead of connection. Because when the nervous system links sexual pleasure to emotional pain, it stays in a state of quiet alert. Muscles stay tight, blood vessels constrict, and that fragile dance between mind and body, it starts to fall out of rhythm. One of my patients, divorced in his mid-60s, said this to me after years of using porn to distract from the ache. I don't think I've actually felt turned on in years, just distracted. And that's the difference. Pleasure without presence becomes noise. But pleasure with presence, that's music. So I invite you to reclaim the ritual, to breathe deeply, to move slowly, to replace urgency with curiosity. Instead of asking, how fast can I finish? Ask, what can I feel right now? Let your fingers explore without purpose. Let your breath rise and fall like a tide. Let your heart soften as your body opens. This is how you rebuild connection. This is how you remind your nervous system that it is safe to be alive again. And you don't need a partner to do this. You don't need youth or perfection or some ideal version of yourself. You just need willingness and a little patience. Because once your body knows you're listening again, it begins to speak, not in words, but in sensation, warmth, pulsing, the quiet swell of blood returning to places long neglected. And with that, confidence returns, not the loud, boastful kind, but the quiet certainty that says, I'm still here, and I'm still capable. You deserve that. You deserve to feel like a man again, not because of what you can do, but because of how deeply you can feel. If this message touched something in you, perhaps share it quietly, as it was shared with you. Because healing doesn't always start with answers. It starts with remembering what you never truly lost.